plains of Oklahoma, there was nothing like a spring storm. Right, Don? He grew up in Texas too. You can see them coming for miles, and these giant storm clouds, especially at night, because you can't really even see them until the lightning starts to flash, and it creates these like sky sculptures that just awaken in you a sense of, man, there is something bigger than me in this world. This text that Mike read for us today from Psalm 29 is a psalmist who's having this kind of experience. In fact, the scriptures, or the scholars of this text, say that this was actually a Canaanite poem that the Israelites loved so much that they stole and changed the ending because it connected to them. It connected to this sense of God is powerful and all around in the midst of our lives. So 1 month short of 17 years ago, I married Heather. Or she married me, whatever that is. We married each other. We were living and married in Boston. And for our honeymoon, we came to a little area called Northern California. You can show that first picture if you want. This is my first taste of Napa wine. I've never left since. This is good. It's a long time ago. We spent a week in San Francisco, a week in Napa, and a few days in the Redwoods. Now, as I said, I grew up in the country, but I love the city. I see and feel God in the city. Where many people meet God in nature, give me a mass of people. Hot asphalt, high-rise buildings, people bumping into each other, the smells, the noise, the energy, and I feel the presence of God. That was until I stepped into the Redwoods for the first time. John Steinbeck says, the Redwoods, once seen, leave a mark or create a vision that stays with you always. No one has ever successfully painted or photographed a redwood tree, including mine you'll see today. The feeling that the trees produce is not transferable. From them comes silence and awe, and not only their unbelievable stature, nor their color, which seems to shift and to vary under your eyes. No, they are not like any trees we know. They are ambassadors from another time. And Lamont says, I don't need to understand the hypostatic union of the Trinity. I just need to turn my life over to whoever came up with the redwood trees. Over our course of time in the redwoods, we learned some amazing things about these trees. Like their roots intertwine. One might think that because they're so big that their roots go really deep, but instead they really only go 6 to 12 feet down, including on the largest trees. But what they lack in depth, they make up for in breadth, extending up to 100 feet from the tree's base. And as they grow together, and their roots intertwine, creating a community of strength. A redwood's shallow but widespread roots help them survive. They can withstand the strongest of winds, floods up to 46 feet deep, which has happened, by the way. Quite literally holding each other down. These redwoods actually take care of each other. Their shallow roots can allow sprouts to pop up, and the big redwoods can support the new redwoods as their cone seeds begin to multiply. Redwoods are often seen growing in circles that we were told are called fairy rings, which my daughter loves to look for the fairies in them. But the parent tree helps to nourish these sprouts with water and with sugar through its well-established root system while they grow. And as the parent tree dies, the young trees continue to grow, circling where the parent tree was. They even host entire ecosystems up in their branches. There are lizards that were birthed and live up in the tops of the trees that never touch ground. There are entire other trees that grow in the dust that sits at the top. So you can have an oak tree growing up in the sky from a redwood. These plants provide food and for themselves and for wildlife living in the soil mats, including insects and amphibians and moss and ferns and lichen and huckleberries. And redwoods, not only that, but they are climate change heroes. They reduce carbon 4 times as strong as other trees in the same forest. Thanks to their large size and long lifespan and rot-resistant wood, redwood trees can pull and hold more carbon from the air, creating clean air for us to breathe. Heck, they can even make their own rain. As the fog rolls into the redwood groves, their leaves sip from the rain, and then they produce their own rain from their leaves to nourish their roots and soil. But beyond what I learned about these glorious trees, that's all head knowledge, right? The redwoods for me physically connected me to the majesty and the glory and the beauty of God. So much so, this is too much information, I have a giant redwood tattooed on my side. Our first step into the redwoods from the Avenue of the Giants, when Heather and I left from Napa, we found the first parking lot and pulled off into that space, and there was this, remember that weird trailer that made it feel like a horror film? There was this trailer parked there, but it was just the trailer and us. And we took off into the redwoods about 4:45 in the evening. Nobody was there. It was just Heather and I and somebody probably in that trailer, but we don't want to talk about that. And so we were walking through the woods, and as we were walking through the woods and climbing over 15-foot stumps that were laying 300 feet across and crawled up on them and crawled across, there was something happening in that space that we weren't alone. It felt as if God was all around us. When I saw these majestic trees, I couldn't help but imagine God's grace and beauty and creation and glory all around us. The enormity and mass of this singular creation caused my soul to worship. Eugene Peterson says that God's holiness is mediated to us through beauty. Hear that. God's holiness. Holiness just means God's set apartness is mediated to us through the beauty that we encounter all around us. The Bible, particularly in the Psalms, articulates the glory of God. Now, glory is a word that we don't use very often in our regular vocabulary. In fact, the only time I can think of it being used in media is when an athlete wins something and we say, for the glory of the prize. For the most part, this is a word we use rarely and occasionally in church. So what does the Bible mean by this notion of glory? It's a wonderful image of God. In some contexts, the word glory means exactly what Peterson said, good work of creation that he started in the foundations by sustaining the beauty and life all around us, and that God would continue the work of redemption by establishing in our midst the kingdom of merciful justice and life-enhancing peace, and that God would continue the work of restoration, making all things new, bringing all things to a place where they are once again very good. The glory has been the defining mark of our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer throughout all time and eternity. And for moments like Heather and my time in the redwoods, or in the gutters of city streets, or in the lakes and cabins that we visit, or in city alleyways, or in the vineyards, God breaks through with this palpable mystery and glory and grace. And it permeates us like it does the psalmist and it does Isaiah, and we can't but help to write poetry and sing and proclaim and tell stories. Because for a moment we touch something. For a moment we touch someone with this palpable mystery, the glory and the grace. And it permeates us, and it permeates the psalmist, and it permeates Isaiah, and it permeates my dad, and it permeates my son who's climbing on the trees, and it permeates each of us. And we realize how blessed we are, even in the mess of life. And just like the Israelites who stole a piece of poetry from the Canaanites and added 2 lines at the very end, through all of this, God makes his people strong. Through all of this, God brings his people peace. And this is why we worship. Please pray with me. Gracious God, may we be surprised by your mystery, awakened to your glory, and may we step into the thin spaces of this world and worship you.